Yeah, that's really good. And sometimes things come up in the course of a study that have nothing to do with questions, conversations, or the Bible. It was one of the first Bible studies I did with a couple in Danville, and we're sitting there watching a video, and the dog is sitting right at my feet. I'm petting the dog. The dog got a little excited and peed all over my foot. You know?
It's a Jack Russell one.
No, it was this big, beautiful golden retriever. And, they were very concerned, and they dealt with that. Now, here's another one. Another time I was sitting on somebody's couch, and we're having a conversation, and the cat was, like, right next to me, and not a huge can of fats. Fan of cats. And the cat attacked me. It just dug in with its mouth and broke skin, and I threw the cat across the room. Roger Buck was with me. Roger Buck was with me with this Bible study. And I'm like, your cat just bit me. And she says, well, you didn't have to throw it across the room. And good thing Roger was there, because he sort of lightened the mood, as you know, Roger can. So that was a situation where I was really glad to have Roger, because I was ready to leave, and they were ready to have me leave. Turned out okay. We ended up baptizing both those people, so that was okay. So what do you do with distractions, though? Okay, let's say that you're in a setting, and a lot of homes are like this today, that, what do they call open concept? Where you don't necessarily have a dining room and a living room and a kitchen. It's all right there. Okay, a lot of our homes are like that. What do you do in that situation? Perhaps, if there's distractions in the room, hey, would you mind? Is there somewhere else maybe we could go study that would be a little quieter? Maybe they have a bedroom set up as an office. Maybe they have a family room downstairs that would be good to go sit at. If the weather's like this, go outside. Hey, let's go outside tonight. It's beautiful. And go study outside. If you show up and the TV is on or it's too loud, hey, would you mind if we turned the TV down or just turned it off? I did that. I mentioned that family, Annie. They had a little boy. He would often be asleep while we did our Bible study, but he was playing a video game, and it was really loud. And I had to ask his dad. I said, hey, is that bugging you? Because it's bugging me. He said, yeah, I'm sorry. I'll go turn it down. And he turned it down. So just ask nicely, about eliminating those kinds of distractions. Sometimes it may mean saying, hey, you just got home from work, you're running late, I know you guys haven't even finished supper yet. How about I come back in an hour or tomorrow or next week, whatever might be best in that situation. If you have people that are under stress and they're just feeling rushed, that's not going to be a good Bible study. You want them to be in a spirit of a learning spirit, where they're able to sit and listen and talk freely, Sometimes it's helpful, like Carrie and Joe, they shared a couple weeks ago when Gene would come out and study, Gene would bring Joe into the house, and that can be a great benefit. Sometimes that can be a great distraction if that other person is like, I think the preacher's a liar. Gene tells a story about doing a Bible study with somebody in Millwood, and the guy's roommate kept walking through without any shirt on and these shorts, carrying I think it was a can of beer. Hey, Preacher Gene, you want a can of beer? And just sort of antagonizing, that kind of stuff. So be careful in those situations. Be aware of maybe the pressure that the other person is under and how you might be a help for them in that. I used to do a Bible study at this one home in particular. They had a lot of dogs. And every time I would go, I would get, my allergies would just flare up, and I was miserable. So an hour before I left, I'd take an allergy pill. I'd go and do the Bible study, okay? So figure out what's going to work for you. It's not going to be this clinical, perfect situation where they've got the lamp set up and a chair and a table and another chair and the campfire's going and tea and biscuits. It's not generally going to be like that. I was just thinking, when we did study at your house, the boys were real little, weren't they? And my boys would go play with them in the basement. And that if you got little kids, use little kids. They make some good friendships that way too. So Identify the distractions. Do your best to reduce or eliminate them. Let me just take a minute here to just focus on the goal of each lesson. The goal of each lesson is to focus on the topic and the scriptures at hand. The best way to do that is to eliminate distractions, but also do your best to eliminate rabbit trails. So let's say you go into the second session with this individual and you're ready to talk about God, the Creator. You know, you've been through the lesson, you've read the scriptures, you're ready for questions they might have about God, the Creator. And next thing you know, they're bringing up Revelation. Yeah, do you really think Jesus is going to come back on a cloud with like 1,000,000 angels and... yeah, that sounds about right to me. Oh, well, let's get into Revelation. No, that's not what we're going to do tonight. You know, let's get to the topic here and give me a few weeks and we'll get to Revelation. I'll get you a book. And I've got a few books I can give you, you know. In a nice way, bring them back on topic. What are some, think the next lesson there, you're talking about creation. What are some rabbit trails that might come up when you're talking about God, the Creator? Evolution. Okay. What else?
There's no evidence for it.
For
God. I've heard that one a lot.
Okay, there's no evidence for God. What else?
You could easily get really deep into apologetics and not study.
Yeah. Age of the earth. You know, the Big Bang Theory. All of that. Those are big questions. And isn't it interesting that there's people on both sides of that issue that are very knowledgeable? And maybe someday we'll be able to study that out. I can get you a book if you're really interested in that. How about tonight we just focus on these verses and see where you're at the end of the night? Okay? We're just going to focus on these verses and see where you are at the end of the night. If they are very much hung up, let's say you started this Bible study, you thought they were really interested in spiritual things. You thought this will be an easy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks and we're baptizing these people. And all of a sudden you find out there's no evidence for God. They really don't believe in God. At that point, I'd be stopping the study. Okay? If you can't get beyond that lesson that God is real and God is the Creator, then we're going to have to back up. And that's probably when you're going to give me a call on your way home and say, hey, this is the situation. What do I do next? Okay? Let's say you get to the next lesson and you find out that you're talking about the authority of the Bible. And they're really hung up on a few issues related to Scripture, the canon. Maybe they were raised Catholic and they don't think that the Bible in and of itself is authoritative, but they believe that the Pope, Catholic Catechism, and the Bible are authoritative. Okay? That's where you want to stop things and say, well, we'll address that next week. You call me, we'll get together a study, and myself or somebody else can go with you, and you study that out. If you get to a point where you figure out they're not believing what we've just studied in the Bible, not that they're skeptical or they're still questioning or they really don't know yet, not that, but they're just, I don't believe any of this that we're studying right here. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. How about I come back next week and I'll get some resources and we can study those together. Would you prefer to do that? Yeah, I would. John?
There was a gentleman that I was studying with and found out that he was raised Catholic, even though in his older years he didn't talk about or say anything or act in any way like he was a Catholic or believe one way or the other. And then, but in our course of discussion, he informed me that he was raised Catholic, which means he was baptized as a little baby. And so, well, I've been baptized, but has he correctly? And so you glean this information as you're just in perhaps a normal conversation with them, but maybe they'll open up during that Bible study, get a little bit more personal.
Yeah.
And of course, the timeline will show that. And I remember that was key for me right then and there. So everything we had studied and talked about, I'm thinking, okay, now I got to backtrack and see where he might be a little bit. and then bring in other scriptures that would back up what we've studied so far.
Yeah, good.
So it's just been normal talking to that person.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think the last thing you want to do is shut down the study and start debating infant baptism,
Right.
right? Here's another thing that will often come up with you. You're studying with a couple, they've been to the Baptist church, they've been very good servants, they have been diligent in their Bible study, they know their scripture, and they keep calling your preacher pastor. I was with a guy one time, he finally got mad and he said, he doesn't go by pastor. Okay, sorry. Those kinds of things, to me, very subsidiary issues, okay? You show up at somebody's house and they just came in from the grocery store, they've got a bag of liquor sitting on their kitchen counter, okay? As long as they're not drunk, go with the study. You know, we can deal with those kinds of issues later. Somebody says to you in the course of a study, oh, churches are full of hypocrites. You know, that's why I really don't like going to church. But you know what? There's a lot of hypocrites out there on both sides of the aisle. And my goal is to not be one, and I hope yours is too. And I hope that that doesn't keep you from coming to Millwood. And if it does, we're going to study the Bible and see where we are at the end of it, okay? Try to redirect them back to things. In our culture today, these are some topics I've had, and I'm taking a couple extra minutes here. I hope that's okay with you. If not, I'm doing it. But in our culture, there's some things you do have to keep in mind. Topic of homosexuality might come up. You may be studying with a couple that lives together, and they're not yet married. Okay? You may be doing a study with a couple who have different viewpoints on a lot of social issues from what you personally hold, or maybe what we as a church would advocate for. Keep those on your radar. Don't let them go, but don't get hung up on them either. Okay? You know, so what does your church believe about homosexuality? How would you respond to a question like that?
I get that one a lot at work because there's an extremely diverse culture at work. And I get questions very similar to that. And I always tell them, well, you know, when it comes to an issue like that, my belief doesn't really affect the final outcome of that. Like, the Bible has already spoken on that. You know, I keep going back to the scripture because, and I've even had to tell some of them, like, you and I can argue all day long. And you can even argue with the Bible, but you're always going to be wrong when it comes to the scripture.
Mm-hmm.
Because I might be wrong about something, but scripture's never wrong. So
Yeah.
I keep trying to point to something other than myself because I could be wrong. I'm fallible.
Mm-hmm.
I always point to what's not fallible.
Yeah, definitely the authority of Scripture. That's why there's a whole lesson on the authority of Scripture. If you can't get them to agree on the authority of the Bible, you got no wiggle room after that. No wiggle room after that. Any other thoughts on that? How you would respond in a Bible study setting to somebody that would say, what does your church think about homosexuality? Well, I would definitely point them to the Bible. I don't have all the verses off the top of my head. You could say something like, I don't have all the verses off the top of my head about that, but I remember my preacher preached a sermon about that, I don't know, it was a month or two ago. Let me see if I can get a copy of that and give it to you. And why is that important to you? I don't know. I knew a guy in high school, he came out as gay the other day. Oh, okay. Not really an important issue to the guy. It was just sort of running through his mind, right? So we have to be very careful. If somebody asks a question, all of a sudden, oh my gosh, what do I do now? They might just, I heard it on the news. I don't know. What do you think about it? Is all they're really processing. In some cases, it may be, well, I used to live as a homosexual. Oh, okay. There's going to be some issues here. There's some things you're going to have to work through here. If it's not going to get in the way of the study you're working on right now, then proceed with that study. Well, how about this? That's a big issue, and it's an important issue in our culture, and obviously it's important to you. How about we work through this Bible study over the next few weeks, and if there's some issues or questions that we need to deal with in that time, we can do that. You know, we'll take time every week. I'll get some resources for you. We can meet separately about it, okay? But I'm not saying be careful of making too much of a topic, but also be careful of belittling the person because of the topic. Okay? Did you have something, Patty?
Some people will ask that question because they want to make sure they're going to a church that's not
Very good
accepting.
point. Very good point. We've had a number of people in the last few months come from denominational churches because they do not like the direction that those mainline churches are going on these social issues. So the point here is, and we can talk more about it next week if you have any specific questions on how to deal with it, be careful of getting caught up in those types of rabbit trails with people. I will assure you this, most people you're going to be studying with at this level, those probably aren't going to be big issues to talk about. You're probably not going to end up with too many times like that. Most of the time, the people that we're talking about studying with at this level, in this context here, are people that can't wait to be a member of the church. They can't wait to get baptized. They can't wait to make sure they know the Bible better. They can't wait to make you happy because you're their friend. And they know that going through this Bible study with them every week makes them happy. If they're skeptics, if they're agnostics, we're not talking about those folks here, right? That's bigger stuff. Olivia's been working with some people at work, and she's been doing her homework, on these topics. So I might even just say, hey, why don't you call Olivia? She just read a great book on it, and she'll give you an outline. That's the resources we should have within the church. We should be able to go to one another, and not just the preacher, but go to one another and learn how to deal with issues that we're facing in these studies. So, well, I better wrap up. Olivia, go ahead.
So with that topic, say somebody is a little bit hung up on the homosexuality thing, but they've already accepted in the first lesson that scripture is authority. Would you maybe just take them to a scripture that maybe lists sins and say, this is listed here with this, with gossip and slander, so not that we take it out to be any worse than anything else, but
Yeah.
if you've accepted
Here's an idea for you. Let's say you go through that lesson on the authority of the Scripture. They've already agreed that God's the creator. God has authority over all people. He's given us His Word, and that Word is authoritative. Okay? The person you're studying with agrees with those principles. Okay? He brings up at some point in the lesson homosexuality, and he says, yeah, I really want to know more about this. Give him that as homework. So here's what I want to challenge you to do this week. I want you to go through the Bible and find verses related to sexuality and what God has to say about it. And next week, we'll get together and talk more about it. Would you mind next week if maybe my preacher came too? Or if another person from church came with me who may know more about this subject? Or if I had a video you could watch or a book you could read? See what I'm saying? And if that does become a stalling point for the study, then stall the study. Take a week to do that study with them. Okay, we want to honor where they are, but we also want to move them along in the process. Okay, so there may be big issues you have to stop with, but most of the time the issues we're dealing with are, end times theology type stuff.
that seems a lot less threatening to let them discover the knowledge themselves.
Yeah, ultimately, the best teacher is themselves in that case, where they're able to use the Bible to unfold what it says, what God has said on the issue. And so you go back the next week, well, did you do your homework? Yeah, I did, and I came up with a lot of verses that talk about this. Obviously, God does not like homosexuality. So where does that leave you? Yeah, I'm with God. Okay, let's move on in our study. I don't know, I'm really struggling with it because I've got this friend, or I've got this sister, I've got this uncle, whoever it is, that, I am hung up on this. Okay, well, we're going to work through that with you. Okay? All right. Catching anything? I'm throwing out a lot of stuff here, but hopefully it's helpful in giving some order to your thought process in proceeding with studies with folks. Okay? So go ahead and continue working through that book on your own. So you're very familiar with the types of lessons that are in there and how you would proceed with that. And as you have questions, thinking about how you would interact with somebody, feel free to write those down, and we can talk about them in the coming 2 more weeks left. So let me know if you do have questions specifically that we need to answer in class. All right. Kyle, you mind praying for us?
Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for